It's going to make you think, it's going to make you laugh, some of it might make you sad, but at the end of the day, you're going to leave with some tips on how to deal with life, and you might even be thinking about, do I need a therapist? And if so, I've got resources for that. But coming up, is there anybody who wants to help me out? You'll just have to read something really quick. Anybody? Okay. Yeah, if anybody else wants to. You can. And you can read 3 of them. If not, no. All right. So like she said, I'm Ashley Taylor Barber. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in Arizona. My practice is off of Northern in the 51. There's 5 of us, and most of us are African American. We predominantly serve the African American population. What I always tell people is a licensed therapist, a licensed marriage and family therapist is more than seeing multiple people in a room. What it actually means, the theory behind it, is that we get to the root of the dysfunctional problem and we eradicate the problem. Which means, if you come see me or my folks, you are not going to be seeing us for years and years and years. We are not going to be wasting your time, and chances are you will not have to come back to us. So what I usually tell my clients now is that I'm like the Black Mary Poppins. I'm here when you need me. Yeah, I'm here when you need me, but I'm gone when you don't. This is not going to be a long-term relationship. So I got into this because with the limited history, African American history that the Arizona schools do provide, I thought to myself, we as African American people specifically are continually reliving our trauma. We walk outside, especially now with social media, we're constantly seeing our people killed, destroyed, all these different things, right? And we're constantly re-triggered. But on top of that, we're trying to survive, we're trying to provide, and we're trying to fight for a cause, right? But how do you continually do that when you often have to stop and take care of your feelings? How do you do that when you haven't dealt with the trauma from generations before, right? How do you do that when what you've been taught generationally for 400 years was survival techniques and not thriving techniques? And how can you do that when you're first generation in college trying to go back home and tell your family all that you learned, and they are so comfortable with what they currently know that they're not open to what you're currently learning? How many of you identify with anything that I just said? Facts. So this is why I'm here, and this is why I have a job, because I believe that in order to change the system, we first have to eradicate the destruction that the system has done to our people. Does that make sense? So awesome. So first I'm going to take you on a journey. I marry marriage and family therapy theories with the history of how African Americans have gone through what we call post-traumatic stress syndrome, which is similar to PTSD, okay? But, which is post-traumatic syndrome, but Dr. DeGrew, who's awesome, if you've never read Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome or you've never watched any of her videos on YouTube, because I understand y'all in school and y'all not trying to read anything extra, she's on YouTube. But when you get a chance, when you feel like it, maybe 5 years when you get out of school, because I wasn't trying to pick up a book after I got done with grad school. They were having us read 1 book in a week, and I was like, y'all tripping. But I did sign up for an accelerated class. I was like, Ashley, you tripping, because you signed up for this, don't you? You know what I'm saying? So anyways, check her out, because she's married to post-traumatic PTSD, what am I talking about? Post-traumatic, I always get it mixed up, but she's married PTSD, and then she's talking about how because of how our families had to survive, broken families, dads being sold away, kids having to work at young ages, Black women being raped, how often in society we're still looked at as products and not people. Because of that, she went and did the deep research about what that looks like when we as a people try to progress forward, okay? But first, we're gonna start with, and I hope y'all love my title, She Acts Like Our Mama. Because in order for me to make you understand how you can thrive, survive, and get rid of these past triggers, these past strongholds that are generationally just taking over our families, like the pipeline to prison, like men having to be the head of their household at early ages, and how that developmentally actually stops them, and how it brings trouble when they go to get married and have their own family, or vice versa. How young women are helping take care of their younger siblings because mom's at work, and how that affects their family when they go into having a family, or what it looks like as a black woman to go into corporate America where there's microaggressions, where you're constantly being passed over for jobs because there's jealousy in your confidence, because racially that person who's jealous over your confidence doesn't even understand that, because their generations have taught them that we're just meant to work and not lead, right? So I want you to understand how this works and how you can see it generationally. So this is why it's called She Acts Like Her Mama, Generational Trauma, and the Slave Syndrome. So I know you're all asking me, girl, you just talked about African Americans, and I got this white man up here, I know. I know, but I believe in giving people their props, okay? So this is Dr. Bowen. He is one of the founders of Marriage and Family Therapy, and his theories are one of my favorites because they make sense. But basically his biggest find was that he would study people who were in a psychiatric hospital, and he found that when their mothers, and no offense to women or mothers in here, I'm sorry, but this is just the research, he found that when their mothers would show up to the psych ward, guess what would happen? They would start acting up. Their anxiety would rise. Their depression would rise. Any of the symptoms that they came in with all of a sudden would be exacerbated, even though before mom got there, their symptoms were at a baseline level. So he said, wait a minute, is this person really mentally ill? Or are there symptoms of behavior of what their family dysfunctionally is doing? And what that means is, so when I used to see kids, most people want to bring their kids into therapy and drop them off, or they're the extreme. They want to tell the therapist what to do. Okay? So, but as a good child therapist, you have to look at the family system, because the kid is actually the smart one. He's showing us that something's wrong. He's saying, I'm not going to put up with this. This is dysfunctional. I don't want to do this. Well, but it looks like he's tearing up a classroom, right? Where did that come from? He didn't just wake up this morning and be like, I'm going to tear up a classroom, right? Where did he get that from? Why is he so angry? Where did that aggression come from? So he saw this in the hospital. And what it was is, depending on what issue the mom had, her anxiety, her energy, whether she was a doting mom, oh my God, are you okay? Or whether she was like, I can't believe you're in this place again. Are you gonna fix them? So whether it was either extreme, what is that doing to the actual patient? It's causing them more distress. So Bowen discovered, you are not a person on a seat. Everything that you are and everything that you created comes from an origin. So he had to study the whole entire family. The thing that he came up with, or some of the theories that he came up with, and this is going to go with a couple of the questions that I got today. So he talked about differentiation of self. And when I talk to my clients about this, because that's a lot of words, nobody's going to remember that. It's basically emotional intelligence. Can you regulate yourself? I always tell, can you stop, pause, think, put in a coping skill, and then find a solution, and not react based off of the other person? Can you regulate yourself? Can you identify your emotion? Can you explain your emotion? And then can you move forward in life and try to find a resolution? Okay? That's differentiation of self. You have a clear understanding of who you are versus the world. So my quick version would be, I'm Ashley Marie Taylor, I'm a wife, I'm a daughter, I'm a stepmom, I call us Nubian queens, but I don't believe that we're colors. But anyway, so I say I'm an African American or I'm a Nubian queen in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I'm a damn good friend. I'm a lover of God. And I stand behind using my voice. So if I was going to talk about who I was versus the world, that is what I would say, right? And of course, it's so much deeper. Like, all the things that I described are super layered, right? Because am I a good mom? Am I a bad mom? Am I an absent mom? Am I a mom that's over enmeshed with my kids, like a driven by the emotional reactivity and the difficulty, the impulses. They are driven by everybody else. Their emotions, how they feel, what they think, how they react, they are driven by everybody else. They're reactive. They're not proactive. You ask this person how they feel, and, or no, I did that wrong. You ask this person what they think, and they will tell you how they feel. You ask this person what they believe, and they will echo what they heard. Because their self, everything about their being, is based on everybody else. And that's a problem. Especially if you're a melanated person in this country. That's a problem. So, we have these people like me called therapists that can help you figure it out. So, everything we talked about, everything that we're going to talk about today is fixable. None of this is a death sentence. None of this is to be like, oh my God, there's something wrong with you. No. You are wonderfully and beautifully made, and there is help, or there's resources for everybody. So, when we're moving into this next process, this is the family projection process. So, the mom that I talked about, a good scenario that really helps people understand this is, let's say there's a mom in her couple relationship. Because when we talk about marriage and family therapy, there's different subsets. So at the top, you have the two individuals, they have their own subset. So they should once again be differentiated. He or she and she, whoever, both partners should know who they are. Then they create the couple subsystem, right? This is, what does the couple look like versus the world? How does the couple move through the world? What does the couple want? What are their values? What do they have to compromise on? Because maybe they're from two different cultures or two different places, right? Underneath that, you have the children's subsystem, okay? So the children are never supposed to link. They're never supposed to push into the parental subsystem, because then you have dysfunction. And then if the two people don't maintain their individual subsystems while being in the couple subsystem, once again, they usually end up seeing me or one of my associates for marriage counseling. That's just how it works. So with that said, when we talk about the family projection process, the example is there is one parent who is lacking of differentiation from their child. And usually what this means is you have an emotionally cut off parent in the couple subsystem. So maybe the husband works all the time. He doesn't have time to be home with the family. He doesn't have time to meet his wife's emotional needs. So what happens when your needs aren't being met? We usually spill them on other people. If we don't have the right coping skills or the right support system, so then the mom, we'll just say the mom here, she's the one who is not getting her needs met, right? She goes over, she brings herself down to the youth or the child subsystem and becomes what we call a mesh, okay? And this is when the mother is living through their child. This is when the child cannot make a decision on their own, even when they come to the developmental age that autonomy is necessary in order for the brain to grow, in order for the brain to learn. Now, let's stop and talk about the brain and why that's so important. So the brain develops from the back to the front, okay? And from the inside out. Now with that said, it develops because blood is literally pumping through the body, it's like a muscle, and the way that blood pumps the most through the brain is through activity. So that's why the brain develops in the first 5 years of life. Because if you guys have been around toddlers, what are they doing? All the senses, ears, mouth, everything, right? Now, one of the other crucial parts is adolescence. Your brain needs to grow. It needs to experience on its own. It needs to develop the prefrontal cortex, the cause and effect thinking, by age 25. So if you and your mom are so close that you don't get an opportunity to develop who you are, it becomes a problem. Now, it becomes a problem for you because anytime you try to go do something on your own, you always have to ask your mom, well, what do you think? Even down to, and I'm just going to be, very explicit because, even down to what bra you want to get, because we all ask people about our clothes, but just these things that you shouldn't have to go to your mom or dad and ask them for, right? You become what we call a mesh. This is a problem because the individual in you cannot be. You would not be able to tell me what makes you differentiated from the world. You would be able to tell me what makes your mom differentiated from the she would tell me what makes you differentiated from the world. Because where the other person begins, the other person ends. How this happens, once again, the parental subsystem is not working. Mom is not getting what she emotionally needs from her significant other. Or in some black families, maybe the significant other isn't there. So she leans on the oldest son. What do you think I should do about this? The son becomes a partner in moving the family forward. The son becomes responsible, like a father figure, to help the younger kids. Okay? Now this becomes difficult because once again, developmentally, that child isn't ready. Okay? So, everybody following me with that one? Any questions? So a meshnet, once again, it's a relationship between two people where boundaries are permeable and unclear. Once again, the other person, where the other person begins, the other person ends. When we go to the nuclear family emotional process, this is when there's so much tension, so much overwhelming emotion in this household. Always chaotic. It's like, if your household is chaotic, you probably were so used to it that when you got to school and there was no chaos, you found it. So a lot of people who come from a family where their nuclear family emotional process was chaotic, they find themselves in my office because their relationships continually to be toxic, and they can't figure out why. And it's because the brain is a pattern-seeking organism, and you've constantly been gravitating to something that's chaotic because that's what you're used to. Can anybody, have you seen this? Has anybody seen this? I assume some of you nodding your head. Okay, so with that said, unfortunately, you're so used to this dysfunction, and this could be one person. Literally, a good example for me is my grandpa. From Mississippi, grew up, during a lot of racism, moved out here, and so he lives his life very, very fear-based, very anxious, very fear-based, doesn't explore, never been on a plane, so much so that when I was 7 and we went back to Mississippi for a family reunion, you think we got to fly? We were in some town cars, y'all. This is before they had TVs in the back seat. We were scrunched up there. My mom, her 3 sisters, all they kids. Their husbands didn't come. Guess why? Because they weren't a part of this madness. Said they let their kids suffer. Can you imagine driving to Mississippi? I was like 7 from Arizona because my grandpa has so much on differentiation, right? The reason being is because his whole entire life he was met with racism. So constantly his survival, his fight, flight, or freeze was constantly on, right? But generationally, now you see a pattern in my mom and her 2 sisters where they're fear-based. Everything is, oh, Ashley, my mom, I don't know about that. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't know if you should start that business yet. If there's not a clear path, it's dangerous. You know what I'm saying? Whereas me and my other cousins are like, well, I'm gonna start this business and, I'm gonna travel to the Bahamas. And my mom's like, I don't know about that flight. I just got married. We were going to Jamaica. My mom, most moms would be like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. My mom's like, I don't know. I'm just really scared for us to all get on this plane. And this is like a Christian woman. Most of the time it's like, give it to God, give it to God. My mom's like, I don't know. This is just, I'm just really scared about this flight. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, we going, you going to buy your flight. You know what I mean? Because I'm like kicking these doors down of this dysfunction. But I hope that made a clear display of what this looks like, generationally, how it could be passed down. Now the only reason it didn't hit me because I'm woke. You know what I mean? I was out here at ASU. I was meeting people. I was experiencing things. Now we're in the generation, especially after the pandemic, where everybody got to take vacation. Every time I'm on social media, somebody going somewhere. I just talked to my soror today. She said, oh yeah, girl, I'm going to New Zealand on March 10th. Say what? What's in New Zealand? You know what I'm saying? But this is a different culture. This, what you guys are doing, the risks, they call the risks, but the risks that you're taking, the exploration that you're doing, the way that you're explaining who you are in this country, you're breaking generational patterns, and you didn't even know it. How many of you knew it? Exactly. Look at y'all. Just chain breakers up in here. I call it, if you're in church, they call it, breaking curses, breaking chains. So chain breakers up in here. So anyways, this person, it's usually the head of the household or someone who has a major emotional influence on the family. Okay? Multi-generational transmission process is really, really similar, except this just brings in the fact that either the differentiation of self in everybody in the family either gets lower and lower and lower because it becomes comfortable and it's okay, or it gets higher and higher and higher. So people start rebelling. Rebelling looks like if you specifically chose to go to a college on the other side of the country so you can get away from your folks. It's called physical cutoff. You didn't know that. That's why you didn't. You probably didn't consciously do it, but it was appealing because they ain't here. You love them, but they're good over there. Okay? Emotional cutoff is where you're grown, but you don't decide to tell your parents everything you're doing and who you're dating and where you're going. The phone calls are just saying, oh my God, the weather's great out here. Oh yeah, I got this new friend and these classes are going great. But really, you're like, I'm about to take this money and go to Palm Springs for spring break, and I got this little fit and, I'm about to meet somebody out there. Like, really, that's what you're doing, right? But you're not telling them that. You're telling them what's safe to tell them, right? Right. Now, or maybe your parents are very, very old school, Baptist or Christian, no such thing as wearing a short skirt or a halter top, you know what I mean? So you got a whole different Instagram, and your mama think that the Instagram, you holding your books. I'm just at school holding my books. Where really the other Instagram is like, all your reels, you just let it out because I get it. When I went to college, a great guy named Alonzo Jones told me, work hard, play hard. You know what I mean? You got to, or else you're not gonna make it. Now it just depends on how much you do both, right? You gotta have balance. But anyways, so you got one Instagram where you're working hard, and you got another Instagram where you're playing hard. And nobody in your family got the other, right? Emotional cutoff. You didn't know it, but this old white man, Bohemian, he did. Okay, sibling position. Y'all know about this one. He's the one who created this that talks about everybody has a position in their family. There could be the hero, which is the perfect child. This is the one that makes the family look good, okay? There's a scapegoat, I talked about that earlier. Problem child, troublemaker, helps the family by pulling the attention away from the family's problem. So in their own way, they're essentially trying to help, but they're also telling us, me, that there's a problem in the family. So mom and dad, don't worry about fighting, focus on me, because I just threw a chair across the room at school. Oh, it didn't hit the teacher, but put a hole through the wall. So instead of y'all fighting with each other every night, you can come and fight with the school and tell the school that there ain't nothing wrong with you. But anyways, we don't have time to get to that. That's what happens these days. People come to school yelling at the teachers when they kid then threw the chair. Anyways. So the lost child, this is the quiet one, the dreamer, stays away, doesn't talk about their problems, spends a lot of time alone, rarely in trouble, and this helps the family because they can say, he's never in trouble. But this is the one that's usually emotionally in trouble, unfortunately. This is the quiet one that you don't think anything's wrong with, and then this is the one who usually needs a bit more emotional help, to be honest, because this is the one that soaks in all the family dysfunction and just holds it in. It doesn't get it out. Last but not least, you've got the mascot. This is the funny one. Breaks up the tension, lightens the mood in the family. If you need a picture for this one, I just think of when Bow Wow was little and every movie he starred in, he was the cute mascot. Hey, that was so cute. He came in with the one-liner, talking sweet, looking cute. He's a mascot, y'all. Y'all needed a representation. So, who can read this? Anybody?
This message serves to clear power and
Well, I heard some of y'all get it. Don't worry about it. I heard you got exam review. I'm not but the reason that it's in here is because you know your brain is a pattern-seeking organism, so we have to work to change dysfunctional patterns. The first step is to identify them, which is why I gave you Bowinian's whole spiel on the dysfunction that can run through families, and then the second part is decide that you want to change them. So that's why that's there. Okay, so my volunteers, who's got great-grandpa Joe? Yes, read his thing out loud.
Grandpa Joe died at 70, married Sue at age 21, not close to his family.
Okay, perfect. So here he is up here. Who's got Michael?
Michael, deceased at age 4, family decides not to discuss it, would be age 64 if alive.
Okay, Riley. Who's got Riley?
Age 62, oldest male, according to family, hero, the golden child, savior for Joe and Sue, excellent sports player.
Perfect. So, great-grandpa Joe and great-grandma Sue, they are together and they created this family, just to give you some background. Who's got Mel?
Melon?
Yeah.
Age 53, oldest female, scapegoat, very beautiful, very enmeshed with mom.
Good job. Richard. Who's got Richard? These are all siblings.
Age 52, mascot, second oldest male, very intelligent but not studious.
Got it. Sarah. Who's got Sarah?
Sarah, age 41, second daughter, sarcastic and intelligent, a lawyer.
Who's got Robert?
Robert, age 29, youngest lost child, surf instructor in California.
Okay. So here's all the siblings. Who's got great-grandma Sue?
Grandma Sue died at age 82, married Joe at age 25, very close to her family.
Okay. So we had great-grandpa Joe. We've got great-grandma Sue. These are all of their kids. And then now we're going to go into their families. So who's got Danny?
Age 44, Allie's father, band member.
Okay. Who's got Allie?
Allie, age 16, oldest daughter, beautiful high school student.
So Allie is the oldest daughter of Mel and Danny. Okay. Who's got Lily?
Lily, age 9, mascot, funny, overweight, anxious.
Yeah, and she's about, I didn't put her age on there, but she's about 10. And then who's got Leroy?
Age 40, Lily's father, school teacher.
Yep. So Mel was first with Danny. They had Allie. Allie is about 16 or 17. And then Mel left Danny, dated a few other men in between, and then met Leroy. And Leroy is Lily's father. Leroy is still around. Danny is not. He's kind of just off doing his own thing. And then Roger.
Age 62, ex-husband, manager of a business institution.
Got it. This is Mel's ex-husband. And then T and E, they might be together in here. Anybody have them? No? Okay, well, they were just, these are Sarah's twins. And Sarah is the hero child, the one who could do no wrong. This is the lawyer. And of course she would have twins, right? So not only, is she the hero child, but then she wouldn't have twins. Mel is kind of the scapegoat, the outcast. Now, who showed up in my office is Allie, and of course all the names have been changed, and I got permission to use this. But Allie showed up with symptoms of wanting to commit suicide, depression, and when I did one of these, which is called a genogram, marriage and family therapist duties, so we can map the dysfunctional patterns in a family, I found out, because it's not what she came in presenting with, that she had actually been molested for years by Roger, who is not her father. He was a detention officer. Mel tried to press charges. When Allie was getting molested, Mel was, unfortunately, she was addicted to prescription pills, so she had fallen asleep. Roger knew this, and so that was his time to be a predator. Allie was very addicted to chaos. We worked through coping skills. We dug through her trauma. She was able to have healthy relationships. She's doing well now. Lily was unfortunately overweight because she was eating her emotions, because even though she was the youngest one in this whole entire family, she had the most emotional intelligence of a kid at 10 years old. The reason being is because when you come from a family that has dysfunction and you are born with the gift of emotional intelligence, she would actually be telling her mom who to date, don't date him, I don't like him. You know what I mean? She had a sixth sense. Whereas Mel and Allie were very, very enmeshed, which remember, there's no differentiation of self. Where does the other one begin? Where does the other one end? So part of my work was to separate that too. Like, Mom, you are not your daughter's best friend. She clearly has a lot of stuff going on. Why is she out till 1 a.m. on a school night with a guy who is an adult? Like, just these things. There was no boundaries. It was a bit easier for someone, a predator, to take advantage, right? So building up these, or basically getting rid of these dysfunctional patterns, showing them to them. And of course, after I did this, I didn't even have to say much because you could start to see it. Grandma Sue was also a victim of molestation. Mel was a victim of molestation. Allie was a victim of molestation. And of course, we are trying to stop that with Lily, okay? But as you can see, when we're looking at dysfunctional patterns, great-grandpa Joe, we're looking at the projection process where I said if the couple system isn't strong, great-grandpa Joe was cut off. He was a drinker. He was always out using. Great-grandma Sue, her needs weren't getting met emotionally. Mel, who was an empath, would be the one to stay back after all the other kids left and help out great-grandma Sue, but she moved into that parental subset. What happened with that? Mel never became differentiated. She never became her own person, but she had to act out because she was emotionally taking care of her mom. So then she became the scapegoat because she was the wild child. Mel, why do you keep doing that? You know, running off with men, running away, different things. And then you have Allie, who was just as fun and adventurous, didn't have boundaries, didn't see warning signs, didn't see red flags, yellow flags, anything. And then you have poor Lily, who's so anxious, which is the, it could be the nuclear family process or the multi-generational process. She was eating up all the negative emotional fusion in the family, emotionally, and her physical vice was eating. Does that make sense? Do you see how that all came out? So I had to teach Mom. I had to build up who Mom was. 1, so she could be a role model for her daughters, right? 2, so she could spot a healthy relationship. 3, so Allie could see what a healthy relationship was. So I was basically working, coaching them both, you know what I mean? While eradicating all of the abuse and trauma that they've both been through. Calming Lily's nervous system down because her nervous system was always on fight or flight, which, you know, I always tell people dis-ease, emotional dis-ease can cause disease, like physical disease. So she was pre-diabetic as a 10-year-old. All these things, all the stress and all the overeating, right? And then she was the comedian. So then they just overlooked her. Well, yeah, she's a little bit overweight. Except Leroy, because he came from a functional family and he would be telling Mel, wait a minute, stop letting her eat all that. Stop letting her stay up late at night. You're not her friend, you're her mother. You know what I'm saying? So they were constantly fighting, which is why they didn't stay together. Roger, he was already gone. But of course, you know, we went through all the steps to contact the authorities and all the things because for victims, you often need that vindication, you need that, right? So yeah, so this is all of those processes that I showed you on display. Now we go to Dr. DeGroot, the one that I was talking about, the African-American researcher, professor, all these wonderful things that she does. She researched and came up with post-traumatic slave syndrome. So on top of all the stuff that I just taught you, then we go deeper into African-American history with Nubian people, because I'm not saying black people, but whatever. Nubian people, and we get post-traumatic slave syndrome. This is a theory that explains the etiology of many of the adaptive survival behaviors in African-American communities throughout the United States and the diaspora. It's a condition that exists as a consequence of multi-generational oppression. You see that? So, but when he was talking about multi-generational transmission, he was talking about nuclear process, he was talking about projection, he was talking about lack of emotional intelligence. How can you be a slave and be able to have emotional intelligence? Because it would emotionally kill you. You couldn't, because you were stuck, you were enslaved, right? So So we see this a lot. I teach my clients emotional intelligence and coping skills first off, because emotional intelligence helps you find a sense of self in a place that is constantly trying to tell you who you are, right? So, oops, keep doing that. This thing is awesome. A form of slavery that was predicted on the belief, a form of slavery that was predicated on the belief that African Americans were inherently and genetically inferior to whites. This was then followed by institutionalized racism, which continues to perpetuate that injury. So this resulting in what she called MAP. M for multi-generational trauma, together with continued oppression. A, absence of opportunity to heal or access the benefits available in society to lead lives and heal. And then post-traumatic slavery. Okay? So I think this woman is a genius. So here she is. Okay. So some of the key patterns that we see when we reflect post-traumatic slave syndrome is vacant esteem, insufficient development of what Dr. Grew refers to as primary esteem, differentiation of self. That's basically what she's talking about, along with feelings of hopelessness, depression, and a general sense of a self-destructive lookout. Why? Because you're constantly trying to build yourself up while society is constantly trying to build you down. A marked propensity for anger and violence, extreme feelings of suspicion, perceived the negative motivations of others, violence against self, property, and others, including the members of one's group, friends, relatives, and acquaintances. So the extreme feelings of suspicion, meaning a lot of us are constantly in fight, flight, or freeze. I walk out the door, I don't know if I'm gonna be tested by a Karen. My husband is always like, Ashley, just keep calm. If I'm not there, don't say anything, don't do anything. Because, you know, I love to shop at Home Goods. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, I like to go to the one in Scottsdale because they got the best stuff. On Thursday, all the new stuff comes in. You know what I mean? And sometimes the women there don't understand their spatial distance. Sometimes they can be very rude because of the color of my skin. And so I come home with these stories and tell him, like, if you would have done this, I'm going to push the cart over there. You know what I mean? And my husband back there, Bobby, would be like, Ashley, come on. You're 5'5". Like, can you not? And I was like, but why? Because I'm on guard. I'm in fight, flight, or freeze constantly, right? I'm a black woman in America with a black husband. When he goes, I pray because I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know if he gets pulled over, what's gonna happen. I'm constantly in a state of suspicion. And there's nothing that tells me that it's safe to be different, right? So if I didn't have emotional intelligence, y'all probably already see me on the news by now. Something crazy. And this also explains why there's so much African American on African American violence. This explains why there's internalized racism, right? Because sometimes when you can't fight the real oppressor, you take it out on somebody else. So racist socialization and internalized racism, learned helplessness, literacy deprivation, the inability to learn. I define this as the inability to learn about our ancestors. Who knew that there were so many African kings and queens? Who knew about the woman king and her tribe? And heck, Black Panther ain't real, y'all. But we out here acting like Wakanda is waking up. Let's be real. How many of you talk to your friends about Wakanda? Like, man, we could just get them. We could just get some of that vibranium. We'd be invincible. Just live peacefully from the earth. And the only time we fight is for the title. You know? I mean, how many of you were upset when he died? I hope you saw the movie. But anyway, I don't want to give it all away. I was going to say something else, but you haven't seen the second one yet because y'all in school, so I'm not going to. Be quiet. Okay. Distorted self-concept, right? I don't know if I would go there, but I'm gonna go there because you guys brought me, so I'm just gonna bring it. Herschel Walker. What is going on? What's happening there? I'll tell you. Dr. DeGrew studied it, and mind you, I forgot to say, she mostly has studied young African American males and men. So let me put that out there. But yeah, Herschel is up here. Where is it? Distorted self-concept. What was that fool talking about? Even if he wasn't African American, I still don't know what he was talking about. Okay? Where are we at? Aversion to the members of one own's identified culture and ethnic group. Sometimes we have trouble cheering each other on. Sometimes we make each other our, I don't want to say our enemies, but our, what am I thinking of? Our challenge, our opponent, right? Why? You want to tell you why? African American history, they've pitted slaves against each other. All the time. Barbarically, they made men fight and called them mendingos. In order to survive, in order for you to stay with your family, in order for your kid to not get sold, in order for you to get killed, they would be eating high-class dinners and making us fight each other to the death. Oh, did I turn this off? I could have turned this off. I turned it off, girl. I'm over here clicking. I'm getting excited. Sorry. The mores and customs associated with one's own identified cultural ethnic heritage. How many of y'all know exactly where your ancestors are from? Exactly. That answers that question. There's like 4 of you. And how would you, right? Where are the resources? They cost a bunch of money. You got that money while you were in school? You want to be a pharmacist, a dental student, and trying to do Ancestry.com for $200, putting your spit in the thing? Nah! I'm 37, and I was like, for me and my husband, I was like, oh my God, we gotta pay $150 each. You know? Even though I get to figure out where I'm from, so I get it. And plus that stuff just barely came available. It's not like it's been around for the last, how many ever years. All that just barely became readily available to the open public. Physical characteristics of one own's identified cultural ethnic group. So, this one, we saw it a lot. It's actually the opposite now. But we saw it a lot where little Nubian girls didn't want to have big legs. For me personally, I was grateful to have a mom who told me when I was at the age of 5, I remember we were in the Burger King drive-thru and my mom said, Ashley, you're getting ready to go to school and you live in North Phoenix. They're going to ask you why your hair looks the way it does. Do not let them touch it. They're going to ask you why the palms of your hands are white and not black. Do not get upset. They're going to ask you why your lips are bigger. They're going to ask you why you have hips, because girl, I had shape already. It was tiny, but it was there. You know what I'm saying? So my mom prepared me, and that was a part of building my emotional intelligence, right? I was ready, but I was still on guard. I was still in fight, flight, or freeze. And mind you, it happened. I mean, me and this little girl got put in timeout because she tried to touch my hair. I wasn't having it. And I was good. I was young and shy, believe it or not. I did not talk this much when I was younger. Never got in trouble. So that was a thing. We even got called to the principal's office. They had to call my mom. They thought she was going to be mad. My mom took me out for ice cream afterwards. She's like, good job. So anyways, I won't read all this, but check her out. Check her research out because we can actually learn a lot. So as I pull this together, this is a genogram just explaining some of Bowenian and then what we just talked about, the post-traumatic slave syndrome. So when we look at the scapegoat, when we talk about the rationalization of slave owners, it was, they aren't human. They can take more pain. They're still objects or commodities. This is why they do not need as much media attention as white women. That's a scapegoat. Well, if they would have been, so when we talk about police brutality, here's the scapegoat. Well, if they would have been driving correctly, he would not have gotten pulled over and would be alive now. The cop did nothing wrong. Heard it. All real quotes, right? When we talk about undifferentiation of self, this is hard for people of color in this country unless you actually know where you come from and you're like first or second generation because your family's gonna bring your culture here. But for us, that didn't happen, right? So we have the struggle of undifferentiated self because we have to live in 2 worlds. We have to code switch, right? Any other presentation I do, the title is not gonna be She Acts Like Her Mom. But you don't know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? But the fact that we have want to live in the white world and the black world, or don't let you be biracial. Don't let you be African American and another culture. Because then they start making up names, Blasian, all these things. Did you co-sign on that? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Is that a commodity code? What is that, right? Then we also talk about pipeline of prison when we talk about undifferentiated of self and family projection processes. A lot of families who they have felt, and it sometimes is true, in order to put food on the table, they had to become crime families. They're undifferentiated. This is all you know. This is what you're born into. This is what we do to survive. And if you have to go to prison, that's a badge, right? So in the African American community, that's family projection process. That is a part of being undifferentiated. Now, of course, when you look at it on the other side, they just be locking people up for, other races get locked up for less, or don't get locked up for less, or all these other things. So there's two sides of this coin, right? Like, we understand that systemic racism plays a huge role in pipeline to prison. So I'm not at all saying that that is not clearly one of the issues. But when we talk about how generationally these dysfunctional patterns, this post-slave trade syndrome, the Bowenian theories, how they talk about how the mind, your emotions, lead to your actions, and your actions lead to behaviors, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. They're talking about the fact that because our ancestors have been here for 401 years now, because they had to survive, these dysfunctional thoughts that have led to actions, that have led to behaviors, aren't helping us survive anymore. And that's what she's talking about with post-trade slave syndrome. They're dysfunctional now. You don't have to be a part of your family where going to prison is a norm, okay? When we talk about physical cutoff and the nuclear family dismantled, so, in slave times, sometimes the father would be sold, families were just torn apart, right? So when you think about that and how we look at our families now, how sometimes we have fatherless mothers and, not fatherless mothers, fatherless daughters and fatherless sons, and motherless daughters and motherless sons, have we really stopped the dysfunctional generational pattern of being okay with that? Now, I don't mean emotionally okay with that, but on the outside accepting it, right? How are we stopping what we had to get used to in order to survive because we had no choice, right? So the broken family home. And physical cutoff. We can close down all of our emotions and be okay with, at least in order to survive. Now, when you come into my office, all of this guard, this wall comes off, right? And I understand that not having a father or not having a mother around, you aren't really okay with it. But I mean, on every day looking at you, you're not crying, you're not falling apart because the person isn't there, right? Physical cutoff. You didn't get the choice to be a part of physical cutoff because they chose to leave, but it's still physical cutoff, right? The angry, strong black woman holds it all together to survive. Her depression, because of this, because of the survival that was needed during slavery, right? The black woman, genetically, passing through the generations, has learned to cook, clean, take care of the babies, work 5 jobs, go to school, still write an essay. She's learned how to do all of this, right? And so her depression does not look like what another races or ethnicity depression looks like. Her depression looks like she can't stop being weak. Whereas in the DSM, which in my opinion is not culturally diverse, would say that depression looks like the opposite. Can't get out of bed, not motivated. You know what I'm saying? Whereas usually the African American woman, we would say she thrives under pressure, but her body isn't thriving under pressure because we're dying at alarming rates of diabetes, heart disease, all the things. Because once again, as I said in the beginning, emotional dis-ease equals physical disease. They go hand in hand. Oops. So with that said, code switch. She's learned to deal with all of this, the fear, the anxiety, the depression, the microaggressions, the worrying if her sons are gonna make it home from school, her husband in prison, all of these things, and then you expect her to just say school. Cool, yeah. If you keep pushing her, she's gonna end up being aggressive. Now, I don't agree with angry, because that's a stereotype. I would say aggressive, because most of the time when a Nubian woman decides to tell you or to be in conflict with you, she can be very articulate about her words. Her eyebrows might go up, her words might be measured. That doesn't mean she's angry. And once again, this is a product of the scapegoat. They're not humans. They don't have any feelings or emotions, so why should they be able to name their own emotions? So we're naming her angry, but did she say she was angry? Or did she say she was tired, frustrated? She's been looked over. She's been taken advantage of. Her ideas have been used and taken and given credit to somebody else, and they're making billions of dollars off of it while her family is still struggling and will still struggle for generations. Can we at least let her name her emotion? Can she at least have that? Yes, she can. Because then you come to me and I'm like, that is so BS. What is your real emotion? Oh, they did? Okay. What we gonna do about it? Now we gotta be articulate. Now we gotta use emotional intelligence. Do you need to stay at this job? Do you need to open your own practice? Because that's what I did. Corporate America tried to tell me who I was. These people didn't have degrees, nothing. I was the clinical director with 2 degrees, tons of experience, but instead they were trying to tell me what should be done and what shouldn't be done. I'd had enough. So I was hurt. I wouldn't call myself angry, but I got called angry, and I had to let them know I'm not angry. I'm irritated. I'm frustrated. These are microaggressions. Now we're past microaggressions. We're just aggressions. There's no coding this anymore because now you've gotten comfortable. We've been working together for 3 years, but you're still looking at me as a commodity. We're checking the box for diversity at our company. Our clinical director is black. Go her. Right? How many black women did y'all see get promoted during the pandemic when diversity, equity, and inclusion became a thing? Stop it now. We've been here. Why is it different now? Now, I appreciate it. Let's get some diversity, but let's ask the questions. Are you really trying to make this workplace diverse? Are you really trying to make this school diverse? Are we checking boxes so we can get more money? All right, so, sorry, get hated, y'all. This is what I do for a living. So I want to go to some of your guys' questions now. We have like 3 or 4 minutes. Anybody? Let's see. How do I fight imposter syndrome? Figure out who you are. Figure out for yourself who you are. And if you need a therapist to help you or a life coach or whatever your choice is, figure it out. Find out your ancestry. Find out your history. If your grandparents are still alive, if you never had real conversations with your parents, do it. Ask them what was it like for them growing up. Ask them what was it like migrating here if you weren't originally born here. Get to know where you came from so you can understand where you are now. Because depression is worrying about the past. It becomes depression because you can't change it. But if you don't know about it and you keep repeating the cycle, it also becomes depression. Anxiety is worrying about the future because you can't do nothing about it. So you just be worried about it, spinning on a wheel. And being in the present is calm. It's no longer fight, flight, and freeze that's out of your control. It's in your control. It's you saying, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is where I'm going, no matter what environment I'm in. So how do you fight imposter syndrome? Become differentiated of self. Become emotionally intelligent. That was somebody's question. Anybody have any questions? These are your questions that you guys put in. I'm just kind of looking at them. How as non-therapists can we help our minority patients the same way? Oh, yeah, how as therapists can we help, how as non-therapists can we support our minority patients? For those of you who belong to a melanated group, treat them how you want to be treated. One of the number 1 issues with African Americans, and it was up here, I didn't get to it, but we were experimented on in all realms. When you get to physical disease, when you get to emotional diseases, We were automatically labeled bipolar without any of the regular tests. Black men with high rates back in the day were labeled as bipolar. They weren't bipolar. They were black men in America. Come on now. You have to look at all aspects of a person, right? So, if you are a minority and you're asking me this question, treat them how they want to be treated, right? I have lupus, had to go to the ER. Had a doctor, didn't want to touch me, told him my pain was at 10. That fool said, there's no way your pain is at 10. This machine says it's not. Oh, okay, really? And then let's not talk about Serena Williams, how she almost died during childbirth because they weren't listening to her. So I mean, the stories go on and on. Treat is simple. Anybody, it doesn't even you don't even have to be a melanated person. Treat your patient how you would want to be treated. Treat them like a person and not a commodity. Treat them like a person and not the 15th patient you've seen today. Okay, so we gotta go. They sent me a bunch of questions. I answered them on here because I knew I wouldn't get to them. So if you want one of these, let me know. I've got cards up here. I do speaking engagements all the time. If you want to hit any of my websites for speaking or therapy, I've got 5 other therapists. We are full right now, but we'll put you on a waiting list. And we're moving Black people forward. We're moving all of our clients forward. We have white, Black, Mexican, everybody. We are moving you forward because in order to change America, people need to understand how to deal with themselves. Ashley Taylor,